Hello and welcome back to another episode of Nick Tiffany's Movie Reviews in the podcast form. Today we are talking about the Super Mario Brothers, a franchise that needs no introduction, possibly the most iconic video game duo of all time. Unless you've been living under a rock, I am sure you have played some form of a Mario game or know someone in your family or friends who've played a Mario game, whether it's the Mario Brothers, whether you're playing Mario at the Olympics, Mario Golf, Mario Tennis. There's just about anything under the sun that you can think of. Mario has done. Paper Mario, Baby Mario, Super Mario Sunshine. The list just goes on and on. The Mario world and the Mushroom Kingdom is such an expansive place that for decades now, fans and people have grown familiar with. And there was a failed Mario movie that came out in the past, a live action. Bless them for trying, but it doesn't seem like a story that necessarily serves itself in a live action fashion. So Illumination, the people behind Despicable Me, Gru, all the Minions movies, they've teamed up with a couple writers, Michael Jelenic and Aaron Horvath, who, looking at their credits, these guys have done a lot of stuff for DC. Whether it's Teen Titans Go, some of the DC animated universe movies. And a lot of that kind of makes sense now that I'm reading this, because the action in this film really stood out. And in a lot of ways, the movie is light, fun, a little goofy. But there are some genuine action pieces or cinematic moments that you're like, oh, whoa, this is kind of hardcore, actually, especially for Mario. Like, this is, it doesn't last too long before it's underscored by a little bit of humor. But there are genuinely some moments that was like, whoa. I'm sure I've seen this in Justice League or the Avengers, or, certain scenes that you can kind of sync up, or you're like, oh, there's a lot of Mad Max Fury Road influence once you get out on Rainbow Road with different Mario Karts and things. So the story is pretty straightforward. You've got Chris Pratt as Mario, Charlie Day as Luigi. They're Brooklyn plumbers just trying to make ends meet, trying to launch their Super Mario business. They poke fun at the Italian heritage and quickly drop their Italian voices. A lot was made when Chris Pratt was cast as the voice of Mario. A lot of people were kind of like, isn't the guy that actually voices Mario still alive? And he is, and he voices Mario's dad in the movie. But of course, this is animation. They want to sell tickets, and so Chris Pratt plays Mario. And he's fine. It wasn't bad. It wasn't, I think, as bad as some people were expecting it to maybe be. There's not a lot of Italian flair in his plumber. He's more New York, Brooklyn than anything. And he's got a couple hints of it. He gives you a couple yahoos and it's a me, but not so much in the way of Italian. Midway through the movie, it just kind of felt like he was doing a different voice, which is fine. He wasn't bad. Charlie Day was, I think, more of a standout as Luigi. His voice style kind of fitting Luigi's more cowarding experience. And the two of them, though, I will say there's a great deal of focus on their relationship as brothers. Mario kind of looking out for Luigi, who was always getting picked on. And even though Mario's the shorter one, the bigger one, and he calls Luigi tall and skinny, it's his little brother. And, he'll be darned if anyone picks on his little brother. So when they're out trying to save the city of Brooklyn, they're underground, trying to weld some pipes, trying to use their wrenches to solve as many problems down there as they can because they want to be big heroes. Of course, that backfires on them, and they end up well below the sewers and come across a green pipe. And then, of course, one thing leads to another. You get sucked through the pipe, and out you come in the Mushroom Kingdom. Except Luigi ended up somewhere dark, fiery, and probably inhabited by Bowser, which was not great. Which means Mario, with the help of Toad, voiced by Keegan-Michael Key, needs to find Princess Peach, have her help him find Luigi, and meanwhile, in the background, Bowser, played by Jack Black, is looking for the superstar, or a shine sprite, as many Mario fans would know, in hopes that, once he gets this, he's going to rule the entire kingdom, and Princess Peach is probably going to want to marry him. And that was a bigger obsession for this iteration of Bowser than I thought. He starts out really solid. He's pretty menacing for a little bit. Jack Black doesn't overdo it until Jack Black does what he does, Jim Carrey does, all those guys. They kind of ham it up a little bit too much, and you're like, okay, this is turning more into a Jack Black show than actual Bowser. And he gets his own song about Princess Peach, and some of it's kind of funny, but, you're also like, all right, I need menacing Bowser. And obviously there's a new audience today. It's not as simple as Bowser stealing the princess from the kingdom and taking her away, or Donkey Kong grabbing the princess and climbing up the ladders as he throws barrels at you. But the film does a pretty decent job of going through covering a lot of different games, a lot of the different levels and creatures you might encounter in some of those games, and is pretty true to how your interactions go with them, whether it's jumping on top of someone's head if you're a turtle, destroys your enemy, and you get a shell to throw around that'll bounce, and, the mushroom power-ups and flame power-ups. The animation was exceptionally well done, super bright and colorful. Everything looked incredibly vivid. The animation design for the characters actually worked pretty well. They kind of looked almost Pixar-esque. A couple of Mario's in-laws were looking like they stepped out of Inside Out or something. But, that's not a horrible thing. Because the character design for a lot of the creatures was done really well. And, I was probably the one solo older person there seeing this film without kids, so I got to keep in mind this is a kids movie. That doesn't mean it's infallible or that it can't be worth critiquing, but it was pretty good for the most part. I was solidly entertained for a majority of the time. Minor complaints just being that I know obviously there's only so much you can do in 2 hours, and you want to tell a story and establish your emotional stakes with Mario and Luigi. But for fans of the games, there's so many iconic places they go to, so many iconic characters you'll meet. And, it kind of quickly bounces through the numbers, just trying to move the plot along swiftly. Gives you a little bit of time in each place, but, they could have done an entire Mario Kart sequence. Obviously, it was inspired by Fury Road and chasing after some people. But, you get a little cool customization as you would do designing your carts, different things like that. It was a good time at the movies. Kids had a great time. There's obviously adult humor in there. The Luma stars, one of them, was just begging for the sweet relief of death as it hangs above fire in Bowser's castle. And, if you aren't familiar with Mario Galaxy or some of these characters, their whole deal is they want to be sucked into the black hole. It means they've served their light cycle. And so everyone else around them, they're like, oh my God, these guys are depressing. Like, liven up, please. And, it's like, please just dunk me, put me out of my misery. And, the kids were giggling. The parents looked clueless and almost like, this is kind of really grim. I know kids these days, I don't want to say millennials, Gen Zers, whomever, there's kind of a darker sense of humor that, while realistic to a degree and understanding, the stars that your life is pointless, nothing really matters in the end, our existence is but a speck of dust in the cosmos, and you're like, okay, sure, in some ways, yeah, but you're like, all right, in the Mario movie, okay, I guess that's what we're doing. And that the Super Mario games across so many different games, different franchises, they're iconic for their use of music as well. Whether it was the 8-bit music that has stood the test of time and been adapted in so many ways, your classic Mario themes down in the dungeon on water, when you get a star power-up, all these different... There's so many sounds and so many little themes, kind of like Pokemon. The cross between Super Mario and Pokemon and Zelda and all those games, the titans of Nintendo's catalog, they've all just got incredibly catchy, really enjoyable music that just sticks in your head. And with the way that people are these days, with the way that composers are, the way that trailers are sold, we get a lot of repackaged songs. Ant-Man did the Elton John's Yellow Brick Road, kind of recut in a slower, more dramatic fashion to go along with everything. And we've seen this for a couple years now. All you do is take a great song, slow it down, do a really soft piano version with some slow motion sequence going on, and it's like, whoa, this is like moody. I don't want to blame the Social Network and what they did with Creep, but since then everyone has been obsessed with trying to recreate that trailer and to recreate, how can we change this song and use it to our advantage in a way no one's heard it before. So with their entire catalog of all these Mario songs that they could have turned into orchestral productions, cool 80s inspired synth stuff, and they do a little bit. You get a couple different renditions of a couple themes. But, we're using I Need a Hero. We're using tons of 80s and, some late 70s pop and rock songs. And, it's fine. It's fine. I know it's a movie. I know that that's kind of the fashionable thing to do nowadays, I would say, whether it's in comic book movies, big action films, whatever. You're going to put on some music that everybody recognizes, or that, they're like, oh, this is such a classic song. I can't believe they're bringing Fleetwood Mac back. This rules. And, it almost becomes more about the song in the sense that it's like, oh, like, it's just to remember, like, the scene is remembered because of the song. Or it was like, oh, wasn't that fun when Princess Peach was doing all her stuff to I Need a Hero. And Princess Peach is BA in this movie. Anya Taylor-Joy. Yeah, awesome voice work. Definitely one of the more standout performers in there. And gives some cool depth to the character of Princess Peach. And, yeah, it sounds cool as she goes around I Need a Hero. But I was just hoping, I guess, for more of those Mario themes, of some of those really cool 8-bit classics that they could have redone. But, that's probably a bigger gripe for me than it is for some people, because I know people love classic music and some of these retro 80s hits in the movies. And there's a time and place, but all the time throughout the movie, I'm like, come on, you're Nintendo. You got songs in the catalog. And then, you got Seth Rogen and Fred Armisen, who also voice, they do Cranky Kong and Donkey Kong, and, it's fun. I sat there for like 2 minutes. I was like, who is playing Donkey Kong? I thought it was someone else. And then as soon as he laughed and you get the, I was like, oh yeah, that's Seth Rogen. That's who Donkey Kong is. And just looking at the cast list here on IMDb, and again, I know you need stars to help sell a movie, because every time there's an animated movie, it's like, The Secret Life of Pets. We have 25 of the hottest singers, actors, TikTok stars, and whomever, all voicing their own little character. And that's fine. It's nice to hear a recognizable voice. But when you've got people in your film like Phil LaMarr, who is one of the greatest voice actors of all time, bar none. He's famously voiced Jon Stewart, the Green Lantern in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. He plays the voice of Samurai Jack, Static Shock, Wilt from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. He's done so many video games. You might know him as Marvin in Pulp Fiction. And this is the frustrating thing about translating video games to movies, is because what makes some of those video games so good is the voice acting. And these people whose entire jobs it is to sell you this character. And obviously that's an actor's job too. But it's really hard to differentiate between Star-Lord and the Lego Movie guy and now Mario, when you have Mario and the guy who played his, the OG Mario is in your movie. It just seems silly. And I'm not saying that you'd save money by having him do it over Chris Pratt. But I don't know. When I'm looking at casting credits and it's like, oh, all these talented voice actors just doing additional voices. You know, did Seth Rogen make the movie for me as Donkey Kong? No. I guess it's my own gripe. When the voice acting is great, it's great. If an actor can pull it off, awesome. But here's just another scenario where you have dedicated actors who are looking for major gigs, who all they do is voice work, because you guys do the big budget, box office, live action stuff, you know? So, throw them a bone. Give them a shot to lead one of these movies. I know Steve Carell's great as Gru, and then you got the Minions. Let's just try something new. Take a shot on a video game adaptation and actually use those voice actors, because I think it would work out pretty well. All in all, though, Mario was a good time. It's not Lego Movie caliber, but, that shouldn't stop you from enjoying it, at the very least, and finding more than a few things where you're like, oh, I get that reference. Hey, there's a little Yoshi over there, Totally family-friendly, totally a good time if you got kids or little siblings, something like that. So, going into Easter as well. If you need something light for the family that's not the Air Jordan approach, Mario is definitely worth the while. Thanks again, you guys, and we'll see you next time.